So we are here again, but this time we are going to talk about methods that include parameters and methods that also return a specific variable type. So let's kind of like review what we did last time, and we just created a method called askInfo, but this method did not return any variable type. That is why it's called void. And it didn't have any parameters. So it doesn't have any variables or any objects inside the parentheses of the method signature. We just called in that to enter your name, and this was like a greeting message for the user to put its name and pretty much store the name inside using reader.nextLine. Remember that reader is the scanner object that we created in order to retrieve the information from the user. Then we just printed name. Now we're going to make a small modification to this method because we want to send or we want to add a parameter to this method. This is used because the parameters that we use are going to be replaced inside the method. So let's say that we want a personalized greeting instead of just please enter your name. Okay? In that case, in order to do that, before the askInfo method, we're going to create a string called greeting. And we are going to say, how are you? Please enter or type your name. This is a different kind of method, different kind of greeting, and what we're going to be able to do is send out this message every time, and that's going to be the one that is going to be displayed. So instead of using a general greeting, we are going to pass a parameter. Okay, in order to do that, we need to change the method's signature. Now, askInfo will require a string called personal greeting. Remember that this is just a local variable that it's created when the method is called. So when I call this method, a string called personal greeting is going to be created, and I'm going to be able to use it only inside the method. Okay? Now remember, in order for a method to work, I need to use a parameter that it's requested. In this case, I need to pass on a string. So right here, I'm going to pass on greeting. And greeting is a string, so it's going to be able to work inside this method. Let's say I don't use a string. I try to call the method, but I don't use anything as a parameter. If I run the file, I should get an error. This is a compilation error. And this compilation error says, okay, there are no arguments and the list differs in length because what we need is a string. It says required a string. Okay, so now that it's required a string, I'm going to send the string called greeting. Now, every time that I call this method, I can modify my personal greeting. So I pass on a string, it jumps to the method and it says, okay, I have askInfo, and here inside the method, I have a string. Now it's called personal greeting. So instead of printing out, please enter your name, I can just call personal greeting, which is the variable that is applied in this method, and I will be able to run my program. So this is called passing parameters. Now this is a method with a parameter. So how are you? Please type your name. Now this will work as intended. Now if I want to change the greeting, I can always change it from here and say, please type your full name. And automatically I should get the new greeting. So what I'm doing is that I'm passing parameters. Now, passing parameters is really important because sometimes you want this variable to not be modified. Or if I'm going to ask info many times during my program, I don't want to duplicate code. I can just change this variable and the variable will be updated in every single task. Okay, so now I have used a method with a parameter. Okay, now parameters can be anything. It can be variables such as integers, doubles, booleans, characters, or even objects, okay, that we will see later on. But for now, let's just pass on a parameter called readings. Now, another type of methods are methods that return values, okay? So right now, this method is a void method. A void method just executes whatever it's inside and it doesn't return anything. Like at the end of this method, when it jumps out of the method, nothing happens, okay? And since nothing happens, I don't have information about the method. Now, there are some methods that return something at the end. You want to do a calculation, and then that calculation has, like, you need an answer, and an answer can be a variable type. So let's try a method called accept. Remember that in our original program, we always says, okay, if the person accepts, then it's going to do it again, and it's going to do it again, and it's going to do it again, until that person says otherwise. So let's create a method that returns a Boolean variable like true or false in order to say that it accepts or not. So in this case, the method signature is going to change a little. It's still going to be public static, but now it's not going to be void. Here, I'm going to type in the variable type that I need the method to return, which is a Boolean. Now, it will return a Boolean after the method has finished. So it is important and it is mandatory that whatever you do, in order for this to work, it will return a method, okay? So public static Boolean, and I'm going to call it accept. Now, accept may or may not have parameters. It depends up to you. If you wish to pass on a parameter, like, okay, it will accept if this happens, then you can do that. But for now, we're just going to leave it without any parameters. What we will do is that we will return a Boolean if the user accepts. So let me just head on and see what the code looks like. I'm going to have the code here. I already have it ready for you guys, so we don't spend a lot of time. And I'm going to go through the code for this method. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user if they want to start the training. Yes or no. And then I'm going to store that option, yes or no, in a variable called option. Now, if option equals yes, remember that in order to compare words or in order to compare strings, we need the equals method. So option, which is the string, dot equals, and yes, which is the comparison. If this is yes, then return. Now, this is the key word when you are returning something from a method. As soon as you use the word return, this program will leave the method and go back from where it was called. So I'm going to say return true, and as soon as it says yes, it will go back and return true from wherever I called it. Right now I haven't called it yet. Otherwise, just return false. So this is a method that only returns true or false because it's a Boolean method, okay? Now, getter methods such as Boolean or doubles or ints, whatever you want to return, must use at some point the word return. Okay, so now let's call the method accept. Now we go to our void main method and we're going to call accept. Now in order to call it, I need to represent it with a true, I'm going to receive a true or a false. So I'm going to use a while loop and say if accept, which is whenever I call it, I'm going to get a true or false. It says while accept, it's going to jump to accept, and this method will return true or false. So it's going to determine if I keep on the while loop or I get out of the while loop. So if this is true, then I'm just going to say system.out just for testing purposes. I'm going to say system.out the print line yes. Okay. And then if this is false, it will just jump out of the loop and the program will finish. So let's see what happens if I run this program. Okay, so the first thing is please give me your this is your personalized greeting. Please enter your full name. Now I'm right here. Okay, my program is right here, and I'm gonna say blah 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 blah. Enter, and it automatically printed out the name, and then it went to my next method, which is accept. In accept, it says, do you wish to start your training, yes or no? If I say yes, it continues in the loop, okay? It asks again for accept. Now it goes to accept and says, do you wish to start your training, yes or no? In this case, I'm going to say no, and it should leave the program automatically. Now, this is the false, and it will leave out of the loop. So now, just to review, we have our main method, which is the public static void main. We have a method called askInfo with a parameter. Okay, we're passing on a parameter so we can use that parameter inside the method. And we also have a method that has a return value. Okay, it has a return value with a Boolean. So every time that you say yes or no, we can continue or not and use it as a parameter. Okay, guys, so in our next video, we are going to check methods that have return values, and they also have parameters, okay? The whole point of this is that the public static void main only makes calls to different methods. And we can have people implement these methods without having any risk of modifying a global variable. If I use global variables, it is possible that somebody that's working on different methods may change our program. This is the whole point of doing this abstraction process.